Welcome to the deep dive. So we've got a stack of sources today that tackle a question we think we know the answer to, but we really don't. What is energy? And we're not talking about, the electrical grid or gas prices.
Right.
We're talking about the fundamental biological force that, that defines our health, our aging, and even our ability to think.
Right. And our mission today is really to completely redefine that phrase we all learned in high school biology, the powerhouse of the cell.
Right. Mitochondria.
Exactly. The sources we looked at show they are so much more complex than that. They're more like sophisticated antennas or information processors. They actually link our psychological states, things like stress directly to our organs, to our sense of vigor.
And there's a huge aha moment in here, one that honestly gives you a bit of hope. The central idea is that aging is not this fixed one-way decline.
Not at all.
We're going to talk about a study with actual scientific proof that a hallmark of aging, I'm talking about gray hair, is, at least for a while, completely reversible.
It's incredible. And to really get that, we have to start with a better definition of energy. One biophysicist in the notes put it perfectly. At the cellular level, energy is fundamentally the potential for change.
The potential for change. Okay, so why is that a better way to think about it than just, the number of calories?
Well, because it shifts the focus. It's not about having a full gas tank. It's about whether the engine can actually use the fuel efficiently. You can have thousands of calories stored as fat, but if your mitochondrial engine is, let's say it's gummed up, that energy has no potential to do anything useful right now.
So it's about the usability, the speed of transformation.
Precisely.
Okay, so let's trace that transformation. It starts, way outside the body, right, with the sun.
Our outer nuclear reactor, yeah.
Beaming energy at us.
Yeah.
Then plants do this beautiful thing where they turn light into biochemistry. We eat the plants, and that energy finally enters our cells.
And once it's inside, that's where the mitochondria take over. They are the main transformation hubs. They take that raw energy from food, combine it with the oxygen you breathe.
And they don't just burn it like a furnace.
No, not at all. They're more like sophisticated hydroelectric dams. Their main job is to pump protons across a membrane, building up this massive electrochemical gradient.
So they're charging up tiny little internal batteries.
Billions of them.
Yeah.
That's the potential energy. And then that charge flows back through a microscopic turbine.
A literal spinning turbine.
A literal spinning molecular turbine that cranks out ATP. That's the energy currency. But, and this is what's so often missed, they don't just make ATP, they also produce these crucial signaling molecules. Hormones, even small controlled amounts of reactive oxygen species.
So they're not just power generators, they're controlling the flow. They're directing traffic.
They're an energy patterning system, like a Morse code lever, deciding if the cell should grow or panic or go into a deep repair mode. It's all about information.
And that idea of flow.
Yeah.
That seems to be at the heart of everything. If you stop thinking about energy as a thing you have and start thinking of it as a flow, what changes?
Everything. On a philosophical level, the only physical difference between a living person and a cadaver is the flow of energy.
Wow.
And it helps us understand our feelings. The sources even define emotions as energy in motion. You don't actually feel the quantity of energy in your body. You can't sense your fat stores.
Yeah.
You only feel the change, the transformation.
Like when you're in a car, you don't feel the speed, you feel the acceleration. Or when you touch ice, you feel the heat leaving your hand. It's the delta.
Exactly that. So when you feel low energy, it's not always a lack of fuel. It's often that the transformation process has just slowed down.
And to make it even more complex, not all mitochondria in your body are the same, even though they have the same DNA.
Right. That's a key point. They're specialized. The mitochondria in your heart, which has to beat nonstop, have totally different demands and a different structure than the ones in your liver, which is all about detoxification. They form these different mitotypes.
So they're like a social organism inside our cells, all with the same maternal DNA, but they specialize based on local needs.
Division of labor.
So let's connect this flow directly to your life.
Yeah.
Because every day you wake up with a finite energy budget. You have to decide where it's going to go.
And this is where that whole idea of just eat more to get more energy completely falls apart. If you push more fuel into the system than your mitochondria can process, the whole thing gets overwhelmed.
And that excess energy doesn't become vitality.
No, it often gets shunted into inflammation or sickness. It becomes a management problem, not a supply problem.
Okay, so let's break down the budget. The sources talk about 3 main buckets where your energy goes.
Right. Bucket number 1 is the vital cost. This is a non-negotiable. It's your heart beating, your brain humming, keeping your body warm. You can't skimp on this.
Then there's the second bucket, and this is the one that gets us into trouble. The stress cost.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
this is anything that fires up your sympathetic nervous system. It could be a real physical threat, like an infection, or it can be purely mental. Worrying about a deadline, that costs energy.
And the third bucket, the one that pays the price for that stress, is growth, maintenance, and repair, GMR.
This is everything good. Healing, building muscle, learning something new, cleaning up cellular waste. And the cold, hard math of your body's economy is that the stress cost always steals from the GMR bucket.
A high-stress day means less energy is available to actually fix your body.
It's rerouted to deal with the perceived emergency.
We see this play out perfectly with something called sickness behavior. You know, when you get a cold, that profound fatigue you feel, that isn't just a side effect, it's a strategy.
A centrally planned energy conservation strategy.
Exactly. Your immune system is incredibly expensive to run. So to pay for it, your brain makes you feel tired, it reduces your appetite, it makes you want to lie still, trying to save energy from other departments.
It is. The sources say this can conserve up to 10 or 15% of your daily budget, which is a huge amount that can then be funneled directly into fighting the infection.
And this reframes something like inflammation too. It's not just damage, it's a signal. An energetic signal.
A great example is intense exercise. After a hard workout, your muscles release a cytokine called IL-6. That's not just a damage marker. It's the muscle sending out an emergency flare, basically yelling at the liver and fat cells to send more fuel because its own stores are empty.
It's a resource request.
Very loud.
聚众搞事，
Which brings us back to
加
that
上大
gray
脑
hair
管道的
stuff.
守门
This
员
is
掏蛋白反水
maybe the most powerful
他们联合
proof
强行
this
打断
energy
神经元
balance
之间的
is
信号
dynamic
传输
and,
神经元之间失去联络
It's a stunning study
久而久之就会
because you
凋
have to
零
think,
死亡
every hair on your
而
head
这
has
带
the
来的是
same
记忆的灾
DNA,
难
but they go gray at totally different times. They found they could link periods of high psychological stress directly to the graying of an individual hair.
and when the stress went away,
The color came back. In some cases, within weeks, those same hairs started growing out bark again. The system recovered.
so the damage wasn't permanent at all.
And here's the really counterintuitive part. When they analyzed the hairs, the gray segments actually had more mitochondrial machinery, more proteins for making energy than the dark parts.
More. Why?
The hypothesis is that the graying process is actually incredibly energy demanding. The pigment cells are working overtime, trying to fight the oxidative stress from the psychological load, and they burn out.
So the body diverts resources to fight the stress, the hair goes gray as a consequence, but once that stress is gone, resources are immediately redirected back to maintenance.
You got it. It's a visible, real-time example of the trade-off between the stress cost and GMR. And this is why, when you really look at the big longevity studies, genetics account for maybe 7% of how long you live.
Only 7%.
Yeah, the other 90+%.
Hmm.
That's not your genes. That's how you manage this energy economy over a lifetime.
Let's shift gears then to the really deep evolutionary history of the system. Specifically, the mystery of why we only inherit our mitochondria from our mother.
This is one of biology's oldest and strictest rules. It's called paternal mitochondria elimination, or PME. It happens in almost all animals. The sperm delivers its DNA, and then its mitochondria are systematically hunted down and destroyed.
A biological mandate.
Right.
So why? Why this destruction?
The main theory is that the paternal mitochondria are just. They're exhausted. They've been through this incredibly intense race to the egg, and they might be carrying a lot of genetic damage. The egg can't risk incorporating that damaged hardware. It prefers one clean maternal blueprint.
So how does the egg do it? It's not passive, is it?
Not at all. It's a full-on, multi-pronged attack. The egg unleashes what is basically a cellular demolition crew. It uses things called proteasomes and autophagosomes to chew up the outside of the sperm's mitochondria.
And the inside.
At the same time, an enzyme inside the paternal mitochondria gets activated. It's called CPS6G, and it just shreds the mitochondrial DNA from the inside out. It's a self-destruct sequence.
That's intense. So what happens if this process is just delayed? Not failed, but just slow.
That's what they studied in these tiny roundworms, C. elegans. They delayed PME by only about 10 hours. It's a tiny little hiccup in development, but that brief delay caused a significant drop in ATP, in usable energy in the embryo.
So a 10-hour energy dip at the very beginning of life.
Yeah.
that has lasting consequences.
Lasting and complex ones. Even though the paternal mitochondria were eventually cleared out, the adult worms had major problems. Their simple reflexes were fine, but their complex behaviors were impaired. They had trouble with learning and memory, and their reproductive fitness took a nosedive. The glitch was temporary, but the damage was permanent.
And this seems to track with the very rare human cases where paternal mitochondria do slip through.
It does. Those cases are linked to some really severe symptoms. Extreme exercise intolerance, muscle weakness, fatigue, a lot of neurological issues. And it makes you wonder, could a much milder delay in PME, a slight inefficiency, be behind some more subtle, hard-to-diagnose human conditions?
So if this grief energy dip causes all these adult problems, what's the mechanism? How does the cell remember that early crisis?
Well, the drop in ATP triggers a universal energy sensing pathway. It's like the cell's main alarm system. It involves a kinase called AMPK, which is the sensor for low energy, and a transcription factor called FOXO. They form a direct link, translating that short-term energy crisis into long-term changes in the organism's programming.
The system senses the deficit and basically hard codes a different future. So if the problem is low ATP, what did they try as an intervention?
This is the hopeful part. They gave the worms vitamin K2, the MK4 subtype, which is known to help mitochondria make ATP more efficiently. They wanted to see if they could just patch the energy problem without fixing the underlying PME delay.
And what happened?
It worked perfectly. The MK4 treatment brought the ATP levels in those embryos right back up to normal. And here's the amazing part for you listening. This treatment completely rescued the adult worms' problems. Their cognition was restored, their mating behavior was normal, everything.
Even though the paternal mitochondria were still sticking around for too long.
Even though the K2 didn't speed up their elimination at all, it just fixed the energy gap.
That's profound. It means the critical problem wasn't the presence of the wrong hardware. It was the temporary energy deficit that it caused.
Exactly. They erased the memory of the crisis by just making sure the energy supply stayed stable through that critical window.
And the implication here, as the sources suggest, is pretty powerful. That something like vitamin K2, MK4, could potentially be a supportive prenatal measure, especially for families with a history of mitochondrial issues. It just speaks to the power of those earliest energetic moments. Okay, let's zoom out and land the plane here. The key takeaways for you today. First, your mitochondria are not just powerhouses. They are smart, dynamic energy directors, antennas.
Second, your life is a constant management of a finite energy budget. You're always balancing your vital needs, the cost of stress, and that all-important budget for growth, maintenance, and repair.
And third, aging is not a fixed line. The gray hair study proves it's responsive and, to some extent, controllable. And finally, that your earliest energy programming, which comes exclusively from your mother's system, sets the stage for your entire adult life.
And tying it all together is this principle of resistance. It applies to everything.
Go on.
Well, for energy to be transformed into growth, whether that's bigger muscles, new skills, or emotional resilience, it has to push against something. It needs resistance. Too little resistance, and you get atrophy. Think of an astronaut losing bone mass in space.
And too much resistance is just crushing. It breaks the system.
Exactly. The whole game, the key to growth, is finding that sweet spot of resistance. The point where the challenge is big enough to force adaptation, but not so big that the stress cost bankrupts your repair budget.
So, with all the data showing that over 90% of your longevity is not in your genes, but in your choices, the greatest power you have is deciding where to direct your energy. So the final thought for you is this. What verb state are you cultivating today? Are you in a state of easy flow, or are you seeking out that calculated resistance that's designed for optimal growth? Think about that until the next deep dive.